Wait a minute. Is it time to talk about Spider-Man 4? What is up, my friends? You might have seen that Tom Holland was recently on the Rich Roll podcast. It was a long-form interview where he talked about himself as well as his new non-alcoholic beer, Beero, but with this being Tom Holland and this being such a long interview, you gotta figure there's gonna be a little bit of Spider-Man talk and hopefully a little bit of Spider-Man 4 talk. I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but from what I have seen on Twitter, it does look like he discusses Spider-Man 4 a little bit, and he does dive into just some background details on Spider-Man and that whole process with the MCU. So what I wanted to do today is go through this entire video and give my reaction to anything MCU or Spider-Man related. Tom Holland recently took like a year hiatus from acting as well as just kind of from the world, so we really haven't heard that much from him on Spider-Man 4. And I'm just excited to kind of go over all the details and break all of this down. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be watching this video, giving my reaction. As always, before we get going, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe if you're new here, and let's dive in.
Do you have a sense of what you want to do next or even what that is?
Hopefully Spider-Man 4, huh?
No, I have like 3 or 4 things that I'm kind of juggling with right now. The biggest of which is my sort of re-entry into the MCU and what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom and Kevin have allowed me into the kind of creative bubble of Marvel, and I've got to see firsthand how these films are built from the ground up. It's been so...
That's interesting. Honestly, like he might even get to this, you know, talking about like his growth within the MCU, but he started when he was so young, you know what I mean? And you starting like that, you're just, you know, big-eyed and like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. But now he's kind of coming in as a vet. Like, obviously, he's not the same age as like RDJ was when he started, but he is sort of an MCU vet, and he's moving into this sort of second era of his MCU career with Spider-Man 4, 5, 6, Doomsday, Secret Wars, and the rest. And so that must be a little bit intimidating, but you would feel like you have a little bit more say in what's going on, and you get to walk in and be like, okay, what's up? I know how to do this.
First and foremost, with Marvel, I'm a fan. I grew up loving those movies. So to sit in the boardroom with them and they've got this great mural on the wall of all the heroes, and to kind of hear them talk about the movies, and I'll come up with an idea and they'll say, no, you can't do that because we're doing that in the new Captain America movie.
It's all mapped out. Yeah.
It's really cool to just see.
I hope it's all mapped out. That's one of the biggest criticisms that a lot of people have with Star Wars and Marvel. Just like things that they're not being a solid plan set in stone. And, you know, obviously through phase 4, it was perfect. But then phase 5, 6, like things are just kind of getting a little all over the place. I think that's what they need to do, is just really bring things together. And I hope the conversations that they're having with him about Spider-Man 4, I hope there are some things that really ground this story and bring things back to some sort of sense of normality, a place where we actually know where we're going, you know?
When you're on set of a Marvel movie, they're big, there's green screens, there's crews of a few hundred people. But again, that community that Marvel and Sony build is so strong that it doesn't feel like a $200 million movie. It feels like this really small, intimate little character piece. And that's what I think works so well with the movies.
That's something that Feige's done for a long time, bringing in these indie filmmakers to very much make it feel like that. I feel like at the core of Marvel's identity, they're always trying to make every film feel like 2008's Iron Man. And that's a pretty badass thing.
Yeah, and one of the unfortunate things about Spider-Man 3 was we shot it in like peak COVID times. So we shot everything in a studio, which meant that I think throughout the...
I guess I knew that it shot during COVID, but I didn't know that they shot everything in the studio. That's wild.
In that film, I might have done 3 days on location. And you can feel it in the film,
wow.
I think.
But it's interesting how he's bringing this up, and he's like, one of the unfortunate things about Spider-Man 3, he says, No Way Home. And I don't know, that's crazy hearing from an actor's perspective, because for me, No Way Home is like absolutely perfect. I really do not find much negative with that film. There was only like 3 times he was on location. That's crazy, dude. The movie that you can feel this is Multiverse of Madness. You can tell a lot of those shots. Like, there's just something aesthetically about Multiverse of Madness every single time I watch it that it's just like, I can't suspend my disbelief. Whereas with No Way Home, I absolutely can.
I think the biggest thing that I'm facing right now, which is without a shadow of a doubt the most first world problem that anyone has ever experienced, is the power of choice, and it comes down to Spider-Man.
Okay, here we go.
For Spider-Man 1, I signed a 6-picture deal. I was 18 years old. I was more excited than I'd ever been about anything ever. And for the last 10 years, I have been at the beck and call of Marvel and Sony.
Yeah.
And proudly
Yep.
so. It's been...
This is what I was saying. It sounds like he's kind of getting to what I was saying earlier. Like, so young, going into this, being so excited, and now stepping back in and being like, okay, what can I do for this rather than what can they do for me?
I'm now at a juncture where I can say no. And now that I've been afforded that power, I am struggling to figure out what is the right thing to do. It's meant I've had to put my foot down in certain instances, which I haven't been allowed to do in the past. And I think...
Don't go too multiversal.
The learning curve that I'm on right now is dealing with that new sense of power, making sure that I don't abuse it.
Well, with great power comes...
I don't want to make another movie for the sake of making it. I don't
The
want to...
studio wants you to make another Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
God, dude, that really is just everything you want to hear as a fan, though. That he just wants to do right by the character. Because that's all that we want, you know? I think a lot of people going into this next Spider-Man, like Spider-Man No Way Home, so cleverly set up the opportunity to make a grounded Spider-Man 4, a new grounded movie. And with the multiversal thing going on at the same time, it just seems like wires are getting crossed. And I'm hoping what he means by putting his foot down is that he's saying, look, like, what's best for the character is for it to be at least semi-grounded. Like, there could be some sort of multiversal post-credit scene. There could be some sort of multiversal thing going on above the film that we can kind of cut back and forth to. But at the heart and soul of this thing, we just need to see Peter Parker in New York. You know what I mean? This guy's journey is just beginning. Like, he just got out of the high school phase. He just moved out on his own. Like, this is it. It's time for Peter Parker to really figure out what it means to be a big city Spider-Man, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And I want to make another one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make many more, but I want to do it for the right reasons.
Many more. Let's go. Obviously 4, 5, 6, but
I am navigating and figuring out what having that kind of power means and that responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm figuring it out. And I'm speaking to people and asking questions. And, you know, I've been speaking to Downey a lot, especially about him making his return, which
Right.
is super...
mentor on and off the screen.
But it is something that keeps me up at night, and I'm constantly thinking of, like, is this the right thing to do? Am I going to do justice to the character? Am I going to do justice to the fans? I definitely don't want to just make a movie for the sake of it, because that's not what Spider-Man represents. So yeah, it's a complicated one.
That is complicated.
It's going really well, though.
It's crazy to hear him talk about this, and I'd be curious to get Andrew Garfield's take on this. Like, I'd be curious to get Andrew Garfield's take on what Tom is saying, because you almost feel like Andrew Garfield came into a situation where he was that wide-eyed young guy stepping into this big studio production, and he didn't so much have a say as to what the character was gonna be, what the movies were going to be. He just was excited to be Peter Parker. And unfortunately, that opportunity was kind of washed away just from studio interference, like the studio not honoring that core of what it means to be Peter Parker. And you can say whatever you want about those movies. Like, they're honestly not that bad. But to me, there's a pretty clear difference between the MCU Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And so just hearing what Tom Holland is talking about, especially like moving forward, like if they were to get rid of Tom Holland and just cast some other guy, they could do whatever they want. But they have Tom, and the world loves Tom. So it's an interesting situation for the studio to be in. And they did luckily sign him to this long-term deal. And so, yeah, this is exciting, man. This is all good stuff.
And the studio is on board and supportive and really collaborative. And I've been so blown away.
It's great to hear.
How welcoming they've been into that creative room. But, you know, we're working now with the pedal is to the metal. We're trying to get it going as soon as possible. But there's still a lot of moving pieces that need to come together for us to hit the ground running.
Right.
Shit, man. Yeah, and that's the multiversal stuff right there. It has to be. There's just so many different voices and just too many cooks in the kitchen type thing. It's just like everybody's trying to have their say in what this thing should be. But even though Superman hasn't come out yet, I still feel like it's probably going to be awesome, because if we can learn anything from James Gunn, it's that the story comes first. Why is Spider-Man 4 worth making? It's not worth making just for money, and I know that's how studios think sometimes, but it's like, it's not. It's worth making because there's a good story to be told there. There's like unlimited good stories to be told with Peter Parker and Miles Morales.
I'm not really sure about how much I can talk about in terms of what are some of the challenges we face creatively and logistically.
No one's listening. You know,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. Obviously, one of the things to like bear in mind with Marvel is that your film is a small cog in a large machine, and that machine has got to keep running, and you need to make sure that you can fit into that timeline at the right time to benefit the bigger picture.
An infinite number of machines across the multiverse.
That's scary, though. That's scary that they're on such a tight time frame. That's the only thing that freaking worries me. I mean, when is Spider-Man 4 supposed to come out? 2026?
The time in which we need to get that done is a tall order, but definitely achievable. With the fantastic people we have working on it now. But my biggest thing is the creative. We have a creative and a pitch and a draft, which is excellent. It needs work.
It's great to hear you.
But the writers are doing a great job. And I read it.
Great.
And it really like lit a fire in me. Zendaya and I sat down and read it together. And we at times were like bouncing around the living room like, this is a real movie worthy of like...
Okay.
But there's a few things we need to figure out before we can get that really going.
Multiverse! I'm just going to keep harping on it. There's a few things we need to figure out. It's like... freaking multiverse shit.
And avoided all the political pitfalls.
Every bit of media training.
Said what you needed to say.
Is that it on the Spider-Man stuff? I think that's it on the Spider-Man stuff. Anything else? All right, well, we don't have that much to go on with Spider-Man 4, but this is at least something, you know? Like, we don't know who the villain's gonna be. I think it's gonna be Kingpin. I hope it's gonna be Kingpin, but what if it's not? What if it's a multiversal villain? Like, we really don't know. I think listening to Tom and the things that he's saying about it, I hope that people out there, at least I do, feel a little bit more confident going into this thing, knowing that he cares as well as the studio. Like, there's a lot that has changed with Marvel just within like the last year and a half. A lot of these bigger studios have realized that people aren't just gonna show up to the theater for anything. If word of mouth gets around that your movie is bad, people won't go to the movie. People will wait for streaming, or they'll just completely write it off. It's crazy that that's the case. And some people look at that as a negative, like the movie, you know, movies are dying and stuff like that. I really do not, because I feel like what that's going to give us is better movies, better films, better stories, because the studios are going to have to realize that in order to get butts in seats, in order to make money, you have to be showcasing a story that is worth telling. I think they have some good ideas up their sleeve, and with Daredevil Born Again coming, I think we're going to get a better picture as to what New York looks like right now with Hell's Kitchen as well as Kingpin, and I think we could potentially even see Spider-Man show up at the end of that TV series, just like a little cameo or something like that. So I don't know, all really exciting stuff. Obviously, there was nothing over the top in this interview, but, you know, he's not going to say anything. He really can't say anything, but it is Tom Holland, and you just never know. Maybe he'll be like, and Venom's actually going to be in this, you know what I mean? But what do you all think? Are you excited for Spider-Man 4? What did you think about some of these comments, as well as some of the stuff that I've been saying here? I'd love to hear all of your opinions down below in the comments, so please leave one down there. I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, my friends, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, and keep up the good vibes. Peace!